ebaddeko ebadde y'ebbago gye tulese mu wano ekwata ku tteeka erigezaako okulungamya enkola ey'endagaano eyakolebwa nga 14 ogw'omunaana 1984. Sandyagadde kwogera ku bigenda mu kkooti kuba sikkirizibwa ate kubyogerako ne bwe mba njagala nnyo. Awulira ekyokubiri, Law Council yevunaanyizibwa okuweereza balooya abavudde ebweru practicing certificates, okukkirizibwa temporary certificates okujja okukolera wano. Eteekwa okuba eyina ensonga lwaki sijja kukkiriza oba kugaana kye bakoze kuba si buvunaanyizibwa bwange. Eyo mandate ya Law Council. Okitegeera? So mubawo obudde beekenneenye bajja kijja kuggwa ng'enjogera ya leero. So sandyagadde
apiiru yammwe gye mwakola nga muwakanya ensalawo ya kooti kukuwesa abantu babujjo mu kooti y'amagye mugezeza ku following omusango.
Ensonga bwe ziba ziri mu kooti nandyagadde mundeke neme kuzoogerako. Okay? Yes. Era nammwe mukimanyi nti no kinkakatako obutogera ku nsonga eziri mu kooti. Nandyagadde musigale ku bbago erituleese wano. Ziyinza okulemesa munnamateeka ava mu ggwanga lyonna okukola wano. Ensonga ezo ziva ku ekyo Law Council kyebeerabye. Nze ng'omumyuka wa Ssaabawolereza wa gavumenti situula mu Law Council era sinze yeekenneenya fayiro z'abo baba basabye okujja okuwoleza wano. So siyinza kwogera ku ekyo kuba tekiri wange. Okay. Kenya ne Tanzania bagenda mu maaso ne bagifuula etteeka mu mawanga gaabwe. Ekitaakolebwa wano mu Uganda newankubadde okuva olwo gavumenti yaffe egezaako okutuukiriza ebimu ku buvunaanyizibwa obuli mu ndagaano eyo. Ebadde ekikola naye nga endagaano teyagifuula tteeka ate nga kyali kikakatako okugifuula etteeka. Ku byakasiimo gavumenti ya Uganda kye yakola kuba mu ndagaano mwalimu embalirira kugamba nti nno bwe muba musasula abakozi ba East African Community mugoberere embalirira eno n'eno, omuzungu gyayita formula. Naye gavumenti yaffe teyagoberera mbalirira eyali mu ndagaano, yagoberera etteeka erya pensioni wano lyeyakyusaamu negoberera embalirira gye bakozesanga ebiseera ebyo okumanya omuntu asasulwa kasiimo kenkanawa. So abantu basasulwa, abalina pensioni basasulwa, abalina gratuity ne basasulwa. Naye era nekisigala nga endagaano tetugifudde etteeka ate nga kitukakatako okugifuula etteeka. So kati gavumenti egezaako okutuukiriza obweyamo oba obuvunaanyizibwa obwokulaba nti endagaano eyo egifuula etteeka neereeta ebbago mu Parliament lye bayise East African Community Mediation Agreement Bill gye tubadde twogerako. Kakati mu bbago eryo mubaddemu ensonga emu gye tuwakanyiza nga ofiisi ya Attorney General. Akawaayiro namba 3 kabadde kasengeka obuwaayiro bwe tulina okukkiriziganya nabwo mu ndagaano naye nga kalekayo akawaayiro akamu. Ffe tugamba nti nno nedda bwonna tubukkirize obuwaayiro endagaano eyo esobole okufuuka tteeka wano tusobole okudda emabega. Ekisooka byonna bye twakola kuva 1984 okutuusa kati bye tuzze tukola okusasula ba pensioners akasiimo, okubasasula gratuity ne assets oba ebintu ebikwata ku bwegasi, ebintu ebikalu oba nga banka, East African Bank, n'ebirala nga bwe mubimanyi, tuddeyo emabega tulabe ngeri ki bwe tubisengekamu mu bbaga eryo, tumanye biriwa ebiri mu East Africa ne biriwa ebya Uganda. Yes. Sandyagadde kwogera nti no twabeerabira. Ekisooka endagaano yasayiningibwa mwaka gw'84 mu biseera ebyali eby'entalo, naye okuva olwo twafuna gavumenti naye nga erina focus, erina byerina okukola, byerina okutandikirako. Totandikira ku mutwe ng'odda wansi ng'ozimba, olina kutandikira ku musingi. Oyinza okusanga ne bwe twadde twagala obbasasula ne structures zaali tezikoze eki, teziriiwo. Naye tuluddewo, yes, naye nsuubira nti abasinga baasasulwa, abataasasulwa era bajja kusasulwa. Ne baba baavaawo abaana baabwe bajja kukola ki? Bajja sasulwa. So okugamba nti no gavumenti eruddewo sandyagadde kitwala nga musango, kuba oluusi gavumenti erwawo naye ate etuukiriza obuvunaanyizibwa bwayo. Buyinza okulwa naye obeera omanyi nti nogenda kukola ki? Kujja. Gavumenti teyandiremye kuzimba malwaliro na kukola nguudo n'ebirala, negamba tusooke tutunulire endagaano ey'omwaka 84. N'ekirala East African Community yali teriiwo, kati East African Community weeri. So kitukakatako okutunulira ebiwandiiko byonna ebyakolebwa mu biseera ebyo, tugezeeko ng'eggwanga okutuukiriza obuvunaanyizibwa bwe bituteekako. The pension for those members or former employees of the EAC that qualified for pension. However, Uganda did not domesticate the agreement. Instead, it made adjustments to its pension law in order to cater for the number of employees of the EAC that fell within the ambits or that qualified for pension. That left some kind of vacuum, and going forward, when the EAC was re-established, assets were dealt with. Along the way, Uganda has selectively met some of the provisions of the mediation agreement without necessarily domesticating it. However, the East African Community Mediation Agreement Bill has been brought with the intention of domesticating the 1984 East African the East African Mediation Agreement of 1984, so that it is passed into law, and that any nitty-gritties that were left out are legally dealt with. The advantage of that is that the selective application we have had along the way in respect of the agreement will be legitimized. Whatever government will have done since 1984 to date in respect of the assets and the payments will be legitimized. Now, if I may go to my text, which is short, Chair and members, the object of the bill, which is give effect to the provisions of the East African Community Mediation Agreement 1984, signed on the 14th of May 1984. I believe some members here were not yet with us. On behalf of the Republic of Tanzania, the Republic of Kenya, and the Republic of Uganda, and for other related matters. Once enacted, the East African Community Mediation Agreement 1984 will have a force of law in Uganda. We have scrutinized the East African Mediation Agreement Bill 2024 and found that clauses 1, 2, 4, and 9 of the bill are in order and legally tenable. We therefore have no comments to make. Regarding clause 3, we propose that it should be amended. The bill in clause 3 provides that subject to this act, the provisions of Article 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15 of the East African Community Mediation Agreement 1984, which agreement is set out in Schedule 1 to this act, shall have force of law in Uganda. The bill proposes to give force of law to specific articles of the agreement and excludes Article 1, that is interpretation, and Article 2, assets and liabilities covered, and Article 16, entry into force, that is commencement, and Article 17, which is citation, and Article 18, the scope of the agreement. The drafting of the East African Community Mediation Agreement Bill 2024 was legally based on the East African Community Mediation Agreement 1990, which had also proposed to only give force of law to specific articles of the East African Mediation Agreement 1984. However, on further scrutiny, we are of the opinion that the entire East African Mediation Agreement 1984 be domesticated and be given force of law without exception. Accordingly, we propose that clause 3 to the bill be amended as follows. It would read, if amended, it would read, the East African Community Mediation Agreement 1984 specified in Schedule 1 to this act shall have force of law in Uganda. Justification. The justification to this is to ensure that the entire East African Mediation Agreement 1984 is domesticated and given force of law by an Act of Parliament. Chairman and colleagues, as a matter of emphasis, Clause 1 of the bill provides that an act shall be deemed to have come into force on the 14th day of May 19. It provides that the act shall be deemed to have come into force on the 14th day of May 1984. Justification. The East African Community Mediation Agreement 1984 was signed on the 14th day of May 1984. Although Uganda did not immediately domesticate the agreement by an Act of Parliament, several initiatives have been made to implement the provisions of the agreement. Providing for the retrospective application of the Act may, once enacted into an Act of Parliament, is to legitimize the activities and decisions taken by Uganda before the agreement was domesticated by an Act of Parliament. I beg to submit.
And I can see the justification for this twist in the clause, but it now legitimizes the entire agreement of 1984. But as members of this committee, it is now our duty to call some interested parties and pensioners and all those who are concerned, because what you are asking for here is sort of a blanket justification, and we now have to go back and look at what has happened since 1984 in terms of which payments have been made and was everything done correctly, fairly. Are there any concerns from the parties involved? So I think we have taken long, and I can see the justification for this, for your position, but I think it is we are constrained not to just automatically agree with government, but at least have time to now call upon other concerned parties to make sure that by the time this mediation agreement is now given force of law, we have met concerned parties and made sure that we are not legitimizing maybe some things that government did that are questionable. That is my immediate reaction to your submission. Thank you.
Attorney General, please.
Mr. Chairman and my sister, basically, assuming the committees to agree with us that clause 3 be amended and the agreement domesticated and given force of law, indeed the government will have to dig backwards, because there were obligations that were established by virtue of that agreement, some of which government has catered for along the way, but there are others which are pending, and there are others that may not have been dealt with satisfactorily. So there will be a form of audit where it applies to assets. They will look at it. The payment for pension, they will look at it. I remember when I appeared before this committee earlier, I think that time they sat in Serena and they brought up this issue. There was the issue of the formula. I told them, look, some of those things you need to consult public service to compare the formula used under our Pensions Act to pay the ESC employees and the formula embedded in the agreement. If the formula in the agreement gives better benefits, then you can go backwards and make a top-up. Assuming our formula gives better benefits, then well and good. So indeed, if the committee agrees with us and Parliament agrees to amend this, the door will be open to do a bigger incision into the whole matter. Thank you.
Attorney General, I thought what is it that constrained us from moving as fast as other member states?
Chair, of course, we can talk of the turmoil. We can talk of the fact that the three countries were not coordinated. We can talk of the focus of government. Our own government was focusing on other things, okay? Until recently, when a member brought up the issue of employees of the ESC, and some of them have even been in court, and these matters have lasted so long, we will not avoid opening this backwards. Because you will even find former employees of the ESC that were not even paid. And this will give them leeway to file their claims. Okay? So I do not see us avoiding it. The issue, or the major issue, will be determining who was entitled under the agreement and who was not. Because there were different categories. There were those who were paid, how do they call it, gratuity. Those who had not worked for more than, I think, 10 years, they were given gratuity. And that is envisaged in our law and in the agreement, so that they do not go away empty-handed. But there are those who were paid. The issue is, were they paid according to the formula in the agreement or our formula? Now, if our formula confers better benefits, then there is no need to reopen it. All you will need to do as a committee is to ask public service to look at the two formulae. The one of our country under the Pensions Act and the one envisaged under the agreement. Basically, that's that.
Thank you. Right.